Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to jump in a time machine and take a look at a really fascinating study. It gives us this incredible 30-year snapshot of business ethics, and honestly, what it tells us about today is pretty eye-opening. So let's get right into it. This is a question that feels like it's on everyone's mind. You see the headlines all the time, right? Corporate scandals, sketchy decisions by executives. It's easy to get cynical. But is that the whole story? Are those just a few bad apples, or is there a bigger trend? Well, to really get an answer, we have to look past the noise and dig into the actual data.
So, to figure out where we're going, we first have to know where we started. And our starting point is way back in 1966. A researcher named John W. Clark did this landmark study. He basically created a tool to measure the ethical compass of people in the business world. This is our baseline, our ground zero.
Okay, and the tool he created is called the Personal Business Ethics Score, or PBES. Now, this is super important, so let's get it straight. A higher score is actually a good thing. It means you are less tolerant of shady business practices. So think of it this way. The higher your PBES, the stronger your ethical backbone.
And there's our number. Back in 1966, the study looked at a group of business executives, and it's really key to note they were all men. And their average score came out to 43.28. So just lock that number in your head. That's our anchor for everything that comes next.
All right, let's hit the fast forward button and jump 3 full decades to 1997. A new group of researchers decided, hey, let's see what's changed. They took the exact same survey, the same PBS tool, and gave it to over 600 people at a huge Fortune 500 company. The goal was simple. Has the ethical landscape shifted at all in 30 years?
And here is the big reveal. The average score for managers in 1997 was 45.25. That is a solid jump up from that 43.28 we saw back in 66. And what this suggests is pretty cool, that over those 30 years, people in business actually became less tolerant of unethical behavior. I mean, that's a genuinely hopeful shift, right?
Okay, so the score went up. But that just opens up a much more interesting question. Why? What was going on that pushed the needle in the right direction? Was it just something in the water, or were there specific measurable things that made a difference? Well, the researchers wanted to know that too.
Turns out, they found 3 key factors that were linked with higher ethical scores, meaning, again, a stronger intolerance for bad behavior. The first 2 are age and the number of years someone had in management. But the third one, well, that was a totally new factor that wasn't even on the table in the original study: gender.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Remember how that 1966 study was all men? Well, the 1997 study included female managers, and guess what? They found that on average, women had a slightly higher PBS score than their male colleagues. The study even suggested that having more women in leadership roles could be a positive influence on the ethical level of an entire company.
But beyond all the numbers and demographics, the study just kept hammering home one central point, over and over again. You can have all the training programs and ethics policies you want, but the single most powerful factor in creating an ethical workplace is the behavior of its leaders. Full stop.
And to really drive this point home, the study's author pulled out this killer quote from General Colin Powell. I mean, it just says it all, doesn't it? You can talk about integrity all day long, but people, your team, they're not listening to your lectures. They're watching your actions. It's all about do as I do, not just do as I say. So, what does all this boil down to for anyone in charge? Well, the paper lays out this simple but powerful 3-step mandate. First, you have to learn. Constantly educate yourself on what it means to be ethical. Second, you have to live it. Embody that integrity every single day. And only then can you actually lead and become the kind of role model that people want to follow. So if you take just one thing away from this whole 30-year journey, let it be this. Good ethics isn't some binder sitting on a shelf or a poster on the wall. It's a personal, private practice. And when people in leadership demonstrate that practice, it gets amplified across the entire organization.
And that leaves us with one last big question. The trend from 66 to 97 was heading in the right direction, but that was decades ago. With everything that's happened in the world since then, where do you think we are now? Has that upward trend continued? It's definitely something to chew on.